I think we are live. Okay, good. At least until the lights back there go out, and then I will reassess the lighting situation then. Hello, welcome everyone to the. I'm going to do it from memory this time. It's been like 6 months. I got to be able to do it from memory. Roach Crossing weekly general live stream, March 31st, 2022. Roach Crossing weekly. Yep. All right. It only took me like 6 months to get the exact wording down. Wow, I look very ghostly pale like this. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll turn the manted light back on actually, because I've got all the natural light, which is surprisingly bright, at least as it's showing up on the webcam, even though it's a very dreary day out. I've got that lamp, and then I've got the backlighting from that stuff. But I don't know if we'll see if it's going to be enough. So another week, another live stream. This will probably be a shorter stream as I've been very busy with a bunch of different, somewhat unrelated things. I have been trying to stop drinking so much caffeine. I feel like it's causing some issues for my mental and physiological health, and so that's been a battle the last couple of days. Although my sleep has improved quite dramatically, so that's good. Let's see. Continuing putting away stuff from Alabama. First solo shipping day since Will went off to work. Well, he's at training for his vegetation assay job right now, or he's coming home from it actually in one of the Carolinas. So have been, the hustle of doing that and realizing I'm probably going to have to decrease the number of orders that I can send out per week because it's just me packing. But the good news is at least the hardest effects of that for now won't be truly felt until next winter because I can throw a lot of things in priority boxes, no insulation, no heat packs, and be fine now that we've gotten through basically the coldest parts of winter. Hello, Tennyson. Hello, anyone else who may be lurking as well. So yeah, that's it's just going to be kind of a slog for a while until I sort of figure out how to do things solo again. Hello, Smack, and hello, Madison. Yeah, so it's going to be a bit of a something. I think perhaps by May or early June. Hello, Shane. Shane. I think by early June, or late May, I will probably send the feelers out to a couple of people I know who might have some interested folks who may want to basically intern at Roach Crossing. So if anybody knows anybody with some vague entomological interests and is interested in some experience with bug stuff, feel free to send them my way. They can use the kcandilli at umish.edu email where I give a little bit more priority to things. Hello, Evan. So yeah, that's where we're at this week. Trying to think if there's anything direct bug importance. It's been kind of a blur with everything, setting up all the stuff from Auburn and anything going on here. There was somebody last week who was asking if I would show off some bugs, and I said that I would do that this week. So if they're here again, I'll show off some bugs, I suppose. One of which is right before we left for Alabama. There was a person I was talking to via email for a couple of months, and they were, they get busy and they stop responding for a bit and whatnot. Life for people who aren't doing bug stuff 24/7. And this person, as some bug people tend to have weird stuff in their collection, or just sort of things that are very rare, very coveted, and they've just sort of been keeping it going in the background for years. So this person works with the Spirostreptus fisheri, or whatever the current Latin is for what was once called Mardonius pyrillus. So he works with those and has had colonies going for quite some time. but also works with Megaphasma dentricus, which is, I think, North America's biggest stick bug, and very coveted. Everybody wants to work with Megaphasma because of that, and a native stick bug, obviously, very desirable. And so he's actually been propagating them for a while, I think several generations now. So that would mean, a couple of years. But that wasn't the main selling point here because I'm very hesitant to work with different stick bugs, not due to any legality type stuff per se, but because of the seasonality of Michigan, where I can't get feed for a lot of things through the dead of winter most of the times, at least not very easily and very reliably. I mean, I have a couple contacts who will send me stuff if I need greens, but it's not like being able to walk outside and grab something, in the middle of February and be able to feed a bunch of hungry stick bugs. So finding things that eat evergreen stuff, especially stuff that does not require me to propagate it or does not require extensive work or setup to make it evergreen, like a lot of the brambles would need to be protected or covered or brought in or whatever during the winter. But this strain of Megaphasma that he sent me actually feeds on red cedar. That's what he found it on in the wild. And so he was propagating some of it on red cedar. Hello, Alan. Propagating, I think he said he was getting larger adult sizes on rose and other more traditional stick bug fare. But something that eats red cedar, which is very common in Michigan, and that's evergreen year round, no questions asked. And so I gave it a go. I wasn't very skeptical because there are little pockets of stick bugs adapt to different host plants. And I mean, you see the stuff that we shove down their faces in captivity that is found nowhere in their wild native habitats or is completely unrelated to any of their wild host plants that they'll take quite readily. And so I have this little group of Megaphasma going now on red cedar. And I also thought, because I have some ornamental white cedars in the front yard, those little plant tumors that they find the little witch's broom or whatever growing on a plant, and then they do tissue culture and they get it isolated, and that's how you get a lot of those weirdly shaped, little weirdly leaved topiary kind of evergreens. So I have a couple of those right outside the front door, and usually winter is a good time to prune them. So if there's ice damage or something, I can just go and snip off a couple branches. And so I tried the red cedar, and then I also tried white cedar, and they took both of them, which is great. Something that's polyphagous is, you really can't complain about that. And something that is evergreen for everybody is also very nice. So maybe if that guy pops up again, I'll grab a couple of little. They're second instar. They were first instar when they got here, and they've been growing relatively quickly. In fact, I may have to start thinking of another enclosure to put them into because they're in a 10-gallon tank right now, and I feel like they may outgrow that uh, faster than I would anticipate. So just some milk instead of coffee. So yeah, there's that. Other stuff that's going on. How long does it usually take them to mature? I have no idea because I've never worked with them before. But I would think that they seem to have one generation per year, as do many native stick bugs. So I would assume that maybe they would be fully grown. Looking at the date, looking at now, maybe by early June, maybe they'll be fully grown. If not late May. Again, I gotta see how fast the pace they end up growing on this stuff. And I'm also sort of anticipating the full size, which is 7 inches. And if they're going to get a little bit smaller than that, then maybe 5, 6 inches. So they may mature even faster than I'm anticipating. So we'll see. That'll be nice to have a good consistent colony of the biggest native stick bug and on an easy host plant, because that keeps a lot of people out of stick bugs, especially at this latitude, is being able to provide host plant biomass in the dead of winter without all the insane prep of freezing or whatever. So let's see some other things. A couple of the tanks I set up for Alabama isopods have been consumed with hair algae, and and it happened very quickly. I mean, it's only been about a week since I set them up. They're on the lights are on a long timer, so they're getting a lot of bright light for long hours. So I'm not surprised. And all the tanks that I've set up using materials from the original stock tank have started to grow this very rich hair algae. And so as much as I like the aesthetic, I don't want the container to be completely overgrown with it. I think it means something weird is going on with the nutrient cycle. I'll repeat the name really fast for Evan of the stick bug. It's Megaphasma dendricoides. Um, Let me make sure that's correct. I know the genus is Megaphasma dendricus. Megaphasma dendricus. There's only 2 members of that genus, I think. So it's a big chunky native stick bug. So in Tennyson, I will comment on the collecting in a moment. Oh, I finished whatever the thought I had was. Oh, the weird hair algae that's popped up in the isopod tanks. So I was looking at it and thinking, like, how am I going to get rid of this? Obviously, I don't want to do any sort of like cleaning or tidying up in there and just disrupting things. And then I thought a little bit more, and maybe a month ago or a little over a month ago, Brandon has very eclectic tastes in organisms that he wants to keep, and he's not a hardcore bug or animal keeper like, I don't know, maybe Will or I, etc., or whomever else. So he likes some of his frogs, and he likes beetles and whatnot. And one of the things that he had talked about and had shown interest in was the Gara rufas, the spa fish, the ones that they use in places to like nibble off dead skin and whatnot. And so he thought that was very fascinating, and so he liked them. And so we sort of been questing for Garas. They're not very common in the pet stores around here, and the fish stores that do get them, by the time we seem to find out that they have them, they're down to like their last handful or like last 2, and they're one of them's huge and the other one's on the verge of death or something like that. And so I went to a fish store, and they actually had a good number of very healthy small ones available. And so I picked those up for him. And since he doesn't have somewhere to keep them yet, because he's going to be moving into an apartment or something, hopefully this summer, he wanted to keep them here. And I had all these tanks full of algae, so I just threw the Gara rufas that I got for him into one of the tanks. And they completely stripped all the algae off the walls. They completely stripped all the algae that was growing at every surface of the tank. Maybe within about a week, and then they're all very plump and very happy, and caused a trophic cascade that caused a bunch of algae to grow in the water column, which I'm more fine with because those were supposed to be green water cultures anyways. So I was like, that doesn't matter. That's fine. So hello, some eggs. Good to see you again. So these Gara rufas have been in this tank hello, Chris. I have some things to bring up with you, Chris, and we can maybe get some feedback while everybody's in the chat here. I'm just talking about a possible solution to my hair algae problem in my aquatic isopod enclosure. So I was impressed with how quickly they ate all of the algae off of all the surfaces. But I was also kind of skeptical because I gave them some shrimp pellets and they mauled them. And so I was like, do I really want to put these in with like sensitive isopods that like the chances of me maybe getting more are very low? But I thought, yeah, I kind of like to clear up the water. And, if they're eating stuff and they're pooping it out, it's going to be creating more detritus in the bottom for the isopods. So it's probably a benefit overall for them. And they'll be more nocturnal anyways, I think, with the fish around. So instead of getting more Gara rufas, I found an eBay seller for some panda Garas. I think it's Gara flavatra. And I ordered, don't be growing algae in your hair. It's overrated. If you grew algae in your hair, you'd be a sloth. So anyway, so I bought a couple of the tiniest size of these panda garas that I could, Gara flavatra, and I put them in there. And they have already gone to work clearing off the algae near the front of the tank. Basically, where they fell into the tank when I put them in, they've stuck around there and have slowly been clearing off all of the algae moving outwards from there. And I'm really hoping that they'll start snacking directly on the hair algae that's in like the water column. There's like big strands of it, and I'm not concerned about it from a water quality or anything perspective because it's good to have in there. I'm more want to make sure that anything that's growing in there is very palatable to the isopods, as palatable as possible. And I think that this is the way to go by getting the algae to be converted from these long filaments of hair algae and globules of it that are sort of out of where the isopods are hanging out and into frass from the fish. So, oh, and there were also some cool mosses that I collected that I put in there, and they were getting covered in the algae. So I think that the fish will be voracious enough to clear off all the algae without doing fatal harm to the aquatic mosses that I put in. So we'll see in about a week how things are. They're in the least sensitive isopod enclosure right now, and I will move them to the scud enclosure if all goes well and there aren't signs of eviscerated isopods in the primary tank. So that was a little thought adventure that I went on. And let me get to Tennyson's query. How was collecting? I personally just found some Blapstinus in my backyard. I'm going to attempt to culture. You find any darklings? Yes, I found a handful of darklings. They're going to TJ, or at least the one interesting one. It's got a very weevil-like body. I'm pretty sure it's a tenebrionid, and so that will be going to him because I have no idea what it is. And if anybody's going to get larvae out of it, it's probably going to be TJ and identify it as well. So, Tennyson, I'm not sure if you were here last week, but if you go into the past live streams, there's March 24th part 1 and March 24th part 2. There was a weird thing that happened with the stream cutting out, and I had to restart it basically. But that I gave a pretty detailed analysis of the collecting trip. And it was a really good trip, and I collected way too much, and I'm still putting away things from the trip. So, let's see. Thinking about anything else that's up or going on. Again, trying to stay on top of emails with stuff, since my time has to be split between doing email. Great stream. Time has to be split between doing emails, and instead of it being split between emails, packing, and husbandry, now it's emails, packing, husbandry, and also putting away as much of the Alabama stuff and having to go out and buy supplies for that and all that jazz. So things coming up. Saturday, I'm visiting some friends in Chicago to drop off some things and also pick up a bunch of stuff. I'm not sure if she wants her name mentioned here, so I won't name drop. But my one friend in Chicago has just a real knack for a lot of bugs. She's very attentive to minute things, and she puts a lot of detail. She puts a lot of effort into the little details of keeping all the things that she does. So she does very well with a lot of very coveted things like rhino roaches and Archispirostreptus gigas, and what else? Damon diadema, and a couple other things that I'm definitely forgetting. And so Goliath beetles. And so I'm going to go and drop off some cultures of some things that she wants from me. And then I get to pick up a bunch of stuff that she has too many of. So I'm going to be getting some more Damon diadema captive bred for multiple generations. More Damon diadema and hopefully some baby gigas and just a bunch of really, really good stuff that I would like to fortify numbers on or just have more of on hand for sales. So So that I'm gonna be driving on Saturday, another drive, 4-hour drive there. Hopefully stay there 4 to 6 hours, another 4-hour drive back, and then Sunday take the day to relax. Hopefully, hopefully. So I saw Emil. Some egg says I saw a mealworm beetle doing what looked like the desert teneb pose, the condensation thing. Yeah, there may be some behaviors that are shared between a lot of those darklings that you would only see under very certain conditions. Um, it will be a fun trip, but because I am excited to see what's available and how all of her cultures of stuff are doing. But I'm actually getting quite tired of leaving the house. I would really like to have a 3 week period of time with no commitments to just focus on bug stuff and orders and whatnot, to be honest, because the weather is going to break any day now, and I've been saying that for a while, but I'm going to check my phone and see what the weather forecast is. Supposedly 66 today, but it definitely did not feel like 66. Oh, not maybe that was just a prediction. But within about a week, it looks like we're going to be getting some storms from the south, which probably be bringing more moisture and warmth. But eventually the weather's going to break, and then I have to get outside and repair my fences so Victor doesn't get out when I let him out without his tether. They go out and cut down all the vegetation in the front yard and spray stuff to keep the deer away from the emerging foliage. Set up the yard enforcer, redo a bunch of fences to make them more aesthetic in the backyard because we're going to be trying to sell the house. Redo a bunch of landscaping, go do my neighbor's landscaping, do my vegetable planting. Can't even think of what else needs to be done. Do I need to paint something? Mostly a lot of fencing stuff. Mostly a lot of fencing stuff. And I'll feel a lot better when that's done because then I don't have to feel guilty about putting Victor outside on the tether. He's like in the hallway, as you can see, because he can just go out and roam and dig up stuff. But all the things I don't want him digging or eating need to be fenced. So there's two growing beds that I will be fencing off because they need to look good for if I go to sell the house. But not fenced all the way off, so I have to leave about a foot gap underneath so that he can't get under easily, but the chickens and the ducks can get in there and forage easily. And then some fencing along my neighbor, and he was telling me that, oh yeah, I'm getting the rest of this privacy fence put in. Oh yeah, any day now. And he was saying that since I don't know, maybe March of last year, and so now I gotta go over and be like, hey, so if you're not getting this fence put in, I got to put in some taller fencing along there, and I don't know where the property line is, so I'm going to have that surveyed, blah, 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 and then hope that it doesn't end up me putting in all the fencing, and then 3 days later, he magically decides to put in the rest of the full fence or something. So I have that to look forward to. But yeah, it should be looking forward to the yard. The front yard looked amazing last year. I can only imagine what it's going to look like this year because last year the sunbed really came into its own because a lot of the perennials are getting more established and there's a bigger annual seed bank of native stuff. But the shade section I had just finished the fall prior, and so last year was its first full growing season, I think. But also, I put a bunch of stuff in there that over the course of the summer and spring last year. So those things wouldn't be established until this year. And then, of course, I have to make sure the deer don't come and eat the tender growth off of everything because the deer pack in the neighborhood just keeps getting bigger and more unruly. So, and they will just come through and obliterate even very toxic things. The new growth isn't as toxic as the older growth or as unpalatable, and so the deer pack will just destroy everything if I don't deter them with sprays or with the motion activated sprinkler. And once things get established, then I can be more lax on it because a lot of the stuff. Does Roundup seem to be the best way to remove lawn? I used a glyphosate solution for that. Roundup is the copyrighted, trademarked, patented, whatever product created by Monsanto, but the chemical glyphosate, which was, I believe, developed by Monsanto, the patent for that has expired. And so many other companies that are not necessarily as controversial as Monsanto also produce glyphosate active ingredient herbicides. And so I usually try to find one of those to use. But it is a very useful chemical for clearing lawn and for clearing vegetation. During the growing season, as if it's warm and humid and the soil biota has not just been completely destroyed, which is probably, hit or miss if you have a lawn, if your soil biota is going to be destroyed or not from the get-go. Agricultural land with soybean, corn rotation, it's probably going to have a very poor soil biota, so the glyphosate is going to stick around for a much longer time. But in a relatively healthy soil ecosystem, glyphosate during the growing season will break down. I think within about 2 to 3 weeks, it'll be fully broken down. So it is definitely my herbicide of choice for clearing areas of stuff. Just because it is not a picky herbicide. Hello, Michael Hare. We were just talking about some hair algae earlier, actually, and now your hair. So yeah, that's what I like to use for clearing things is glyphosate-based herbicides, and then for clearing grasses out of places, clearing turf grasses out of places they shouldn't be. I usually use like a 2,4-D based one, or not 2,4-D. What's the other one? 2,4-D is for killing broadleaf stuff that's in grassy areas. If you want to kill grass that's mixed among broadleaf stuff, there's another one that I can't think of right now. But anyway, so I use that because I get turf grass popping up here and there and moving in from my neighbor's lawn occasionally. Have you ever cleared honeysuckle? Yes, night and day. I've cleared honeysuckle, buckthorn, privet. Haven't done Phragmites work yet, but know people who have. I've done Canada thistle. With woody stuff, it's actually very easy to kill with herbicide. You cut the stems, and you do it after around August, when the plants sort of stop the flow of nutrients and resources up into the leaves, and they're getting ready for winter, so they start to do a drawdown. So usually late summer through late fall is excellent time to use herbicides to clear woody vegetation. You just cut the stumps, you dab the cambium of the stump with your herbicide, which would be glyphosate, a strong glyphosate solution, and you basically kill it very quickly, very easily, very little, spilling of any chemicals anywhere, just ruthlessly efficient for clearing that stuff. So yes, I have cleared it with herbicide before. So yeah, getting excited about perhaps doing live streams in the front yard and seeing if my neighbor comes out to stare or something while I'm sitting around talking at the my phone or the computer or whatever for a couple of hours. But yeah, I am looking forward to a good growing season. I gotta cut those 9 barks back. They're getting a little unruly. I gotta give them a little bit of a trim so they're not dangling over the path and whatnot. Let me think if there's anything else, any other issues, any other things that are going on. Because like I said, this will be a shorter stream, but I don't want it to be 30 minutes short. I'll try and get to an hour, but it's difficult because my brain is also wanting me to go downstairs and continue putting things away. But also there's emails to be done, and boy, do they come back with a vengeance. I just cleared the inbox. Oh, let's see, when do the new messages stop? I just cleared the inbox maybe 2.5 hours ago, and there's already 17. And that's just the Roach crossing inbox. I still have to go through and do the other inbox. It's really never-ending battle. So my apologies if anybody has emails that I am not getting to as swiftly as I have in the last couple of months, because again, my attention is split. Hello, Chad. Again, my attention now has to be more judiciously split between working on online stuff and working on actual in the real world stuff. Which, speaking of, Chris Snyder, if you're around, I saw that mock-up that you did for an organization system on the site, and I really don't know how you're able to slap this stuff together so quickly because I do really like this the system you have here with a sort by family, sort by care, sort by things, and not as in how I have the drop down sort of tabs for stuff that allows you to go by sort by type by etc. with the actual pages with the images, but an actual gigantic list that you can do a search of by sorting on the spot. So I really do like that. I think there's some potential to work that in somewhere on the site. Now, the one, and again, I must emphasize, I really, really like this. The one thing that I am constantly sort of big body ATL. Can you show some cool big insects? All right, there's somebody asking for bugs. So as soon as I finish this thought with Chris, I will move on to I will show off some big bugs hopefully. But anyways, the one thing I have noticed is, and it's kind of discouraging whenever I try to innovate anything on the site or not. I mean, I haven't really made any big innovations in terms of the layout and whatnot in a while, but still something that always concerns me is, and I just have to accept this is just always going to happen, is there will always be people who, bless their heart, are technologically illiterate or who, and that's fine. That's fine. We don't all have to be amazing programmers like Mr. Chris Snyder. But there's some people who just don't seem to read anything. And, I'll still get people asking questions about, like, I'm looking for like small roaches. And I just sort of think, well, you could go to the website and go to the small roaches tab, you sort by adult size. Or people who will see that I have something available, but then they'll ask the price and how and like the quantity. And it's like, surely to ask this question, you had to know that I have these available. And surely you went on the website and saw that they were there, and that's how you know to call them whatever you're asking for. But you did not also see the pricing or something. You have any advice for making bins escape proof? Well, I'll touch on that real quick, Evan. So gaskets are your friend, and if not gaskets, layers of fabric or cloth or something like up there really helps with an extra layer of protection. The Roach No Crossing barrier material has been phenomenal for preventing escapes in a lot of my enclosures. And then, of course, as I just said, a layer of the cloth or whatever, the gasket will give you an extra layer of protection. And if the barrier starts to get gunked up or whatever, you've got a year and a half plus without replacing it and whatnot. The cloth really gives you an extra layer of assurance that things aren't going to escape. And what has happened with a couple of these, where they've been set up for maybe 2 years, and the barrier has just started to go. Like this, a Glautrix Gemma container is eventually I'll start to find one or two tiny nymphs on the underside of the cloth material, and that's when I'm like, okay, yeah, I know I need to replace this now. Oh, this is a little bit too far up. You're just eyeballing this and making sure it's not toasted or something because it looked a little bit toasty. Okay, that's probably fine. So anyway, so those are fine. So yeah, and gaskets on the inside, at least with the 5.5 and 10 gallons. And by say I is now I have to do it, but prior to this, Will was making gaskets for all of my different enclosures here. Actually, let me get one right now. So for the tanks that don't have a light on them, so pretty much everything downstairs. So this is, corners are secured with electrical tape, and this is a gasket. It's just like a foam window sealant. So I try to get it pretty thick because the nice thing about these lids is that because they're metal, they actually sort of push down or weigh down over time and get a good snug fit without having clamps or anything like that. And I have used various plastic containers and whatnot in the past with gaskets. And the quality of the gasket really varies by not just with brand, but by individual container. Because there were some gasketed containers that I could have swore would have been escape proof, and I would still have some scapes or some problems with them. So I really like the spongy material. It's just the stuff that I pick up from Menards or Home Depot or whoever has it available. And it's not the really thick, rigid sponge. As you can see, it's got some give to it. So when I put these down, it really sort of settles in. And of course, again, the weight from the actual metal sort of helps with that. And then on the underside here, because I have a light on this, but because I don't want small roach nymphs getting through this coarser mesh, I also have aluminum window screening, which is then held in place with actual duct tape, not like duct tape, but like duct tape that's meant for ducts. So this is like the metal duct taping here that I use, and this has worked extremely well for hissers and for whatever else I throw into the tanks that I use. But again, for the tanks that are not having a heat light put on them, I, instead of having this underlayer with the smaller or the less coarse aluminum window screening, I instead have a sort of nylon material that I put underneath that, it's not attached to the lid, but it droops over the sides and that gives an extra layer of preventing things from getting out. And sometimes if it's something that I really, really, really don't want getting out, I'll use a frost cloth instead of that because it's even finer and things don't seem to like chew through the frost cloth, whereas sometimes they'll chew through that nylon-y material sometimes. So let me see if I can find a cool big bug upstairs. A lot of my big bugs are downstairs. But if I can yoink one of these guys out, this could be good. I also don't want to get bit by one of these. Also have to find them. I really don't want to have to take this container down. Come on. Oh, movement. Aha. Won't bother this for too long, but this is a. I really don't like those jaws. This is a Messinarina CF torcata ugandensis. Now, according to Kai, pure Messinarina ugandensis subspecies or species has never actually been kept in culture anywhere, supposedly, and all the ones in culture anywhere in the world are, again, supposedly from crossing of ugandensis males to some other species females and then backbreeding to produce blues. And I trust Kai, but I'm not 100% sure, and I have no experience with that side of the beetle hobby to be, to make any sort of credited claims there. But these have been doing well for me. They didn't come with any strain information other than the fact that they're a U.S. line of Messinarina torcata ugandensis or whatever. So I know at least that the adults will be blue, but I don't know if they're going to be solid blue or high white or if anybody's actually selected for that. So I'm just calling the strain U.S. blue to distinguish it because there's some strains that slip into the U.S. occasionally from overseas that have more white and have been bred for different things. So yeah, this is very chunky. Really don't want to get bit by those mandibles. Definitely, Sydney larvae are not in my experience, not overly vicious, but I have been nipped or at least pushed into by like pachnota larvae if I've held them in my hand for too long. That's a very unnerving feeling for me, so I don't really want that to happen again. Um, so yeah, Alan seconds the notion that most of the Ugandensis aren't pure. And from talking with somebody who's been around for a very long time, raising and keeping beetles, he had mentioned that his stock was originally a cross of Ugandensis and produced browns and greens and blues, and then eventually I think other people bred it for more of the blues. So this is some sort of blue Messina that has been floating around the U.S. for a while. So it's a big larva. Hopefully, getting pupation soon. Some other species of not necessarily this gigantic size, but of similar size have been pupating, and I think these guys are just about due for it. I can't actually remember how old these are. I want to say they've been. I got them when they were first instar, and now they're all third, and they may have been third for like 2, 3-ish months. So we'll see what happens. It'd be neat to have some of these available by fall. Because again, I like seeing beetles a lot. So I'm going to put this back. But look at those mouth parts. Not even just like the mandibles, but whatever the maxilla or whatever processes are. Yep, yep, yep. You don't have to bite me. I'm not gonna hurt you. You're going back in the tank right now. uh, and I think I'm gonna wash my hands real quick. Okay. Oh, angry man. Yeah, I really don't want to get snipped by those mandibles. They seem like they are more than capable of just slicing right through something. So, I'm trying to think anything else. Not necessarily up here. Any new things? Hmm. Maybe some Coyote Peterson should get bit by one of those, for science. Honestly, I think a Dynasti's Tedious bite might be comparable. Those ones might be a little bit more inclined to inflict major damage, though. So, uh, just really trying to think anything else of note to bring up right now. How's stuff from Alabama doing? I'm still in the process of putting away a lot of things. A lot of the millipedes have been doing fine, so I'm happy with that. Uh, Anything that is doing that, the jumping bristletails, actually, they might not actually be jumping bristletails. I think it was rock bristletails might actually be the family. But the bristletails are actually doing quite well and made survived the trip home, which is that is doing quite well for keeping bristletails in captivity. But they're doing all right. Uh, Kinds of peds. Um, we went off looking for Choctella huberti, no luck. Did collect some Choctella Cummins-I. Going back and looking through some of the other stuff, we've got a couple of pseudo-polydesmus species from Tennessee and Alabama. Uh, Uriurus, Auturus. I need to look at. There's an image somewhere. It's a really low quality like JPEG image or something, but it shows the ranges for the different Uriurus and different Auturus species. And I need to find that again because that would help me very quickly determine what species I have and what genera I have. So a couple of Uriurus, Auturus, Pachydesmus, couple Pachydesmus, Aphaloria, maybe Sigmoria. A lot of those flat millipedes, I am beyond being able to tell apart. But we did collect a good number of those. Yeah, polydesmids. Are Uriurus a polydesmid? Polydesmid. Largest order. Because I know Uriurus are a polydesmid, and they're quite easy. The thing with Uriurus is that they just need rotting wood, and when you find them in the wild, they're almost always inside of a log or underneath a log that's rotting. One exception was when we were at Hurricane Creek, we were finding them in kind of leaf litter, but the leaf litter was so rich and there were so many other bits and pieces of like woody material mixed in that they could have just been eating the wood in the leaf litter. So, but Urus and Auturus just basically eat nothing but wood, and so you can keep them in just white rotted wood material, and they do just fine. But you have to kind of keep an eye on whether or not they're exhausting it, and it's not very easy to tell because unlike with like a spirobolid millipede, which would leave, you'd find all the frass pellets. The Urus and Auturus, they kind of like plaster their poop places, so it's just like little discs of diarrhea-y looking wood all over the place. And so you just kind of have to feel for when they've exhausted the wood material. And despite being found under logs and whatnot, they really don't like to be stuffy. And so if you set them up in like a sealed plastic container, they'll just sort of rot away. And that's again going back to ventilation, which I talk about incessantly. But yeah, by offering them ventilation, a good amount of ventilation when the air humidity is high, you can kind of offset that sort of the just melting that will happen to them. So, but I have bred Uriurus and possibly Auturus before, and I'm going big or going home with all my enclosures nowadays. So everything either gets a fully equipped 5.5 gallon or a big critter keeper or whatever, instead of trying to force things into smaller cups and containers of things. So had polydesmids. Chain says I've had polydesmids do well in sand substrate with lots of driftwood with variation in moisture. They are hard though. Yeah, I wouldn't even classify Urus and Auturus as being hard. They just you just have to be attentive, which is something that you don't always have to be with millipedes, where you can set them up and forget about them for months, if done properly. But you can't slack off on if the wood burn. It's almost most feasible to have a second enclosure ready when you set them up, and by the time you start getting captive babies, to sort of move a handful of them to the new enclosure, and then just sort of do that as time goes on. Rotate them through enclosures if you can, or just get ready to dump more wood into the main enclosure. So, but the other ones, I kept Pachydesmus alive for a while. I got 2 adults from Satchel circa 2018, 2019. And I think they lived for over a year. They were in a big communal enclosure with ducky isopods and scaber and all that other stuff. But they were fine. And again, I feel like I would have gotten offspring if it wasn't 2 males. So, but I think there's definitely they can't be as difficult as they seem to be because they're all over in the wild, or at least some of them are. So I'm just hoping that my well ventilated setups that are just teeming with fungus and rotting leaves and all that other good stuff will be fruitful, and hopefully be able to offer captive bred Aphaloria and whatnot one day. My hopes are not through the roof, but I am optimistic that I will learn something from keeping all of them as I have been. And no, I've never gotten bristletails to breed in captivity. It's hard enough just getting them into captivity because, at least around here, if you find them, you usually find one or two at a time, which is not good odds for starting a colony. And if I encounter them on a collecting trip, where it's more likely to find, 5+ of them, whether or not they make it back home is completely up to the fates. They dry out very quickly. You can smother them very quickly, which is why I was excited that these Alabama ones actually got back just fine. And I ended up dumping them in with one of the polydesmond millipedes. I want to say it was one of the Aphalorias. And my hope is that they'll be able to find just the right micro climate in there, and that they will start reproducing, and then I can sort of expand into other species if once I find out that method works. Just eating some turnips, don't mind me. Anything else? Alan, the small, not even small, the tiny purple millipedes that you got me have been breeding very abundantly. I can't remember what the species is, but they're tiny and they're like a neon purple. I think they'd be very popular if I put them up on the site. Yes, raw turnips, some eggs. But it's okay. They're salted. I'm gonna dip them in some salt. Makes a good snack. But yeah, Alan, can you remind me what the name of those little tiny purple millipedes were from Florida? Because I will not be able to figure it out to save my life. But anyways, those are doing well. Not a huge turnip person. And actually, pickled turnips are even better than just these raw ones with salt, and even better than just these generic turnips with salt are those watermelon radishes, where they're green on the outside and then pink on the inside. There we go. Alan says it is Rhinotus purpureus, and an amazing Latin name, because we could just call it like the purple millipede, because they are actually purple. And it's one of those few times, looking at the pictures, it's one of the few times that most of these pictures don't really capture the beauty of their coloration. Oh, here's one from Mush Roaming that really, really, really shows off the coloration on these millipedes. I'll post it over here. So these are doing extremely well in with some bumblebee millipedes, and I have bred them before back around. Let's get in our time machines and travel way back to the year 2010 when I went to Florida to collect in Fort Lauderdale. It wasn't just a collecting trip with some friends. It's just a great just hanging out trip. And fortunately, there was sort of the Fort Lauderdale equivalent of a woodlot along the sort of beach paths that they had. And so I got to go in there and collect my first Paraplaneta australasiae and bumblebee millipedes and all kinds of other very common tropical Florida fauna, but at that time was very exciting for me. But in some of the soil that I had shipped back were some of these little purple millipedes, these Rhinotus purpureus, and they ended up just reproducing and multiplying in with my bumblebees at the time. And so I just sort of thought, well, let me just do that again. It worked the first time. Why wouldn't it work again? And so these Rhinotus are now doing very well in with my my bumblebees, the Amygdalopolis. So it's great because you can keep these cute little purple ones with other millipedes, and you don't have to keep two separate containers of them. They have little cone heads. Really, I gotta look a little closer at these images. Oh yeah, got kind of a pointy head. It's almost kind of phallic, actually. But yeah, so these hopefully make these available in the near future, and obviously people are going to go crazy for them because they're very easy and very pretty and very communal. So yeah. And another species I think they do well with. I haven't put them together yet. And Alan just gave me a big old colony of them because my other colony dried out over the summer. I'm gonna get this right on the first try. Helicorthomorpha, Helicorthomorpha holstii. Let me see how I did. Helicorthomorpha holstii. Oh, I butchered it. Helicorthomorpha holstii. Yes, I got it pretty much right, kind of. Helicorthomorpha holstii is a black and orange dragon millipede. It's found in Florida, and Alan gave me a good colony to replace the ones that I lost and will not lose again. Relatively easy. Alan feeds his on his potting soil, which is Alan's potting soil is rotting wood, basically. Whatever this company or brand is that sells the potting soil, it's basically just well composted mulch. So it's just a very finely shredded mulch, basically that has been rotted and fermented. So they will eat rotted wood. When I was doing well with them, they were feeding mostly on leaf litter. And they are probably just generalists in the wild. But they're basically a tropical oxidus, so they're everywhere in some of the places that you find them. But they will, like oxidus, they seem to require a lot of that organic material in captivity. You can get them to pretty high densities, and you can get them to higher densities than you can oxidus in captivity. So those will be, that might be a good tag team. You get the black, the orange, the purple, and then maybe if you want to be very basic, you could have bumblebees with them, so you'd have a full stream of colors, and millipedes all live in commune. Actually, I might actually try something like that. I was thinking the other day. I was at Meijer and looking at sort of the pet supplies that they have. And Shane, I can offer some to you. Alan just gave me his big colony, and I basically left half of it. Unfortunately, they don't turn orange in captivity. Really, Alan? Really? I wonder why that is. Is it because of lack of carrot or carotenoids? Or is it possible that the ones that you haven't gotten them to maturity yet in captivity? I wonder what the key is. If you're right on that, it might be. I mean, we could just offer them something with carotenoids in it, like carrots or something. And since it's an introduced population, it's unlikely that whatever is creating the orange in the wild is something very unique or very special. It's got to be something that they can find very easily in the wild. So, but I think I noticed a lot of the ones that you had given me in that colony were immature, and I just sort of figured, like many other flat millipedes, that the immature coloration was not as impressive as the adult coloration. So so we can workshop that and figure out what the situation is. Again, it seemed like the ones that you would I didn't have mine long enough to say, oh yeah, these definitely aren't turning orange as adults, because all of mine died at about halfway grown during the summer when they dried out. So, but if we can figure it out, I think it might just be carotenoids or something fungal related. The setup that I put them into does have a lot of live active mushroom activity, so maybe there's something that they couldn't turn them orange. I wonder if it's fungal then, because when we saw them in the wild, they were just feeding on just random detritus and whatnot, and on like the fungal activity underneath logs. So maybe we'll see what happens with mine then. We'll see what can happen, what can be done. So, but maybe it is a light thing. That would be very interesting, but they weren't diurnal. They were hiding under stuff when we were encountering them during the daytime. So Ooh, I just got an email saying I'm gonna get a refund check for some insurance stuff. That's pretty cool. That's pretty nice. I won't say no to that. But anyways, so Alan, what's that other species that's black and yellow that I forgot to pester you for before I left? That we found along with the Helicorthomorpha, because I really want those when you have some available. Yes, I would really like those as well because that's an easy flat millipede, and those ones are very definitively black and yellow. Isiomorpha coarctata. Yeah, I gotta next time I get a box or something from you, I'm gonna beg you to send a couple of those along. Just some tiny things that can all be kept communally, you know. What I was saying before was supposedly they need to be moved to Oxidus. Yeah, I could see that. What I was saying before was that I was looking at the containers of stuff they have at Meyer, and I would like to put together some proof of concept enclosures for communal things. So I was looking for one that had a very aesthetic look. There were a couple that had sort of rounded corners on them. You know, just these random, not even generic, but just sort of specialized big box store tank manufacturers sometimes make something that's very aesthetic. And so I was looking at them and thinking, oh, yeah, maybe I could show off a Darkling communal in this one. Oh, yeah, maybe I could show off a Roach communal in this one. And so eventually we'll pick one of those up and throw something together and perhaps do a video on it, you know, show people, oh, yeah, you can keep all these together and keep a culture of them all together just fine like this. Yeah, the actual critter keepers from Myers have gone through a couple of iterations. I really don't like the ones they have now. They're very, I don't know how to put it. They're just so different from like the main brand critter keepers that they're just kind of off-putting. Like they go upwards like that. It's a base shape instead of being like a straight up like square or rectangle. And you know, I could see how that would be kind of cool if you had all of your critter keepers like that. But the problem is because that part of the pet department at Meyer is kind of the neglected stepchild of the inventory. When you see them, like half of them are cracked, and like half of them don't have a lid available. So then you have to ask somebody if they have lids, and they probably don't. And you know, there's just a lot. It's just too much hassle, you know, which is why I like the sort of the things that are intended to be more of a fish tank thing, because they're boxed up and the quality tends to be a little bit better in terms of things being damaged and whatnot. So so yeah, I'll probably pick up one of those eventually and throw together some proof of concept enclosures for people because I really do think that there's a lot of untapped potential for keeping things in sort of a fish tank esque manner with a bunch of different species living together like that. And you have the advantage of things, you know, breeding very easily in that sort of setup with inverts versus with fish, you know, depending 80% of the fish you get from any fish store are not going to breed communally with other species in your average community tank, basically, unless you're going for like convict cichlids or any sort of live bearer. So, and you know, I really like the Hemithorsaura to get some time to shine because I really do like them, and I guess this is important to note. I have my first F1 adult Hemithorsaura vittata now present in the enclosure, which means an F2 should be popping up within the next 3 to 4 months. And then I can truly say that I was 1,000,000,000% successful culturing Hemithorsaura vittata. And you know, for the setup and the space they occupy and the spectacle, I really don't care that I have to maintain them in a 10-gallon tank. I mean, that's what a lot of my other roaches get nowadays, anyways. But you know, if you could do it in a 5.5. You could do like Kai's trying and try and get a colony going in a critter keeper that you carefully modulate all the humidity and whatnot for. But you know, the 10-gallon works for me for them. And I could see somebody doing a 5.5, and I could see very easily doing a communal with a larger blabberate in that sort of setup. Maybe even giganteus or something else that might appreciate a little bit of the extra heat. The possibilities are endless as long as it's well ventilated and there's decent warmth going into it. But yeah, just hemipterosaurs, vittata at least, do not do well in closed enclosures. They really like that ventilation for whatever reason. And I think TJ was concerned that I would lose my colony or lose part of it because I've really talked about the regular maintenance and whatnot with them. But I was gone for the whole Alabama trip, and Brandon came and watered things once, and they were just fine. It's more like if you are doing less consistent maintenance or husbandry on them, that kind of stacks up over time. Like if I wasn't watering them once a day, I don't think they would be able to tolerate the like 6 days of weird maintenance that they got while I was gone. So it's more keeping the momentum of the colony going, and they'll be much more durable and resilient. But they're not gonna. If every week I was only watering them once a week, or not keeping up on making sure there's a pile of fish flakes at the front, I don't think they would do nearly as well as they have been. So it's just more about taking care of them so that you can, if you need to, just sort of say, okay, I'm not going to do anything with this. I'm going out of town, or I'm busy with life stuff or something for a while. So, yeah, and I think with that being said, and again, there's some things I really need to get to in the basement, and also messages because again, I'll be going on Saturday and hopefully taking Sunday off to breathe and not think about my crippling caffeine addiction. I think I will call it a night here. I want to thank everybody who tuned in. Not as exciting as last week's stream, what with the stream cutoff drama and the giveaway and whatnot. But hopefully, still a decent stream, and also hopefully by next week Thursday, I'll have some more things to talk about in depth. Well, at least I can bring up whether or not the Gara are working out, how some of the things that I sort of put in stasis while I was working on the priority Alabama things are going. There's a couple of things that I collected that I put into the cold room and said I don't have time to put these away while I have these other more important things to do. And hopefully, when I finally put all the Satennis into their final enclosures, I don't get bit and die. That would be very unfortunate. So, um, so thanks again, everybody. I look forward to seeing everybody again next week. And until then, stay warm. The spring is right around the corner. I swear. If you're at a latitude similar to mine, it's right around the corner. I swear. And may your cultures be ever bountiful. Good night, everybody.